Hello, my name is Lubow Wolynetz, and I have something to say. I think probably it began at home. I was always surrounded by a tradition, by embroideries, by different aspects of Ukrainian folk art. My mother embroidered. She taught me the first few stitches, and from then on I was always fascinated by it. Just grew, because I grew up with it, my interest was continuously increasing in it. I wanted to know as much as possible, and I actually wanted to go down into the depth of how it started. Why are we using these traditions? For what reason? Who created all of this? What good does it do for the community? And this was my beginning. I think, there's specific, once I began working in it and teaching others, it's this friendship, the camaraderie, the devotion, a lot of patience, and it doesn't matter what ethnic background you are. Somehow, when we get together to do any kind of folk art, especially in embroidery, since I teach it have been teaching it for over 40 years, there's something special about those people who are involved in it. I think through friendship, there's such an understanding between each other, and then also there's this creativity. You learn traditional aspects, but then you can input your own taste, your own artistic know-how, and create something extraordinary, something original. Well, for Ukrainians, it definitely was, since Ukraine was always under the domination of different powers, and very often, the only way Ukrainians could make a statement was by using their traditions and using their folk art. And for example, if there is any kind of, you couldn't rebel by fighting, you knew you would be outnumbered, you knew you would be killed, but you could make a statement that I am Ukrainian and I'm preserving my ethnicity, I'm preserving my national heritage. And in this way, most of the people, even today, you can see, they all put on an embroidered shirt or an embroidered item to make a statement in this fact. So you can do a lot of political statement making by using your ethnic heritage without the necessity of fighting or killing. Right. Almost at the end of the war, we were trying to escape the Bolshevik invasion in Western Ukraine, and so we kept moving towards West wherever we thought Americans were and we could find freedom. And just a few days before the end of the war, we ended up in a little town in Germany that already Americans took over, and we lived there for a few months, and then all of the immigrants that happened to be escaping the Bolshevik invasion and ended up either in Germany or in France or in Austria, the American army organized for us displaced persons camps. And so we lived for 4 years in a displaced person camp. And there I went to school from grade 1 to 4. And I had a wonderful teacher. She loved embroidery, and she came from the same area where I was born, in the Carpathian Mountains. And she made us embroider at least 1 hour a day in her class, besides all the other subjects. And she taught us all the stitches that we could learn, at that age. She even made the boys embroider also, yes. And those of us that she thought were, proficient in it, she would invite into her attic room, and out of her kind of tattered suitcase, she would take out all of the embroidery samples that she brought with her. And it was so awe-inspiring. And as a child, when I saw this, I said to myself, when I grow up, I'd love to have something like that. And this was my aim, and so I do have a whole suitcase full of the different variety of samples of embroidery from different regions of Ukraine, and she was the inspiration really for me. And then when I was when the displaced persons camps were disbanded, we had to go somewhere, whether it was Canada, America, or South America. My mother had a cousin in United States who came here between the wars, and she sponsored us because you had to have a sponsor to come. And so we came to America here in 1949 in May, and I remember they met us at the pier and took us down into the subway, and she lived in Brooklyn. It was my first experience of riding in a subway. It was a little shocking, but you get used to that. And then we moved back to the city, and I went to school here in downtown, and I went to Washington Irving High School. Then I graduated from Hunter College, and then I went to Columbia University to get my master's in library science. My first work was in the Slavic division in New York Public Library, and that was one of the most best times in my life. First of all, the library had a huge collection of Ukrainian books, Ukrainian archival material, and especially many journals and writings of ethnographers who began in 19th century to study Ukrainian art. They went from village to village because they saw that a lot of it was dying out, and they wanted to preserve and document it. And Slavic division had all of this on the shelves. So I just absorbed all of the literature that I found in the Slavic division. It was a beautiful experience, and it just enhanced my knowledge and my desire to learn as much as I could about the traditions and folk art and so on. Yeah. In the New York Public Library, in the general collection, there was another Ukrainian elderly lady. She came here as an adult already, but she went to Columbia University, also library school. She worked as a librarian there, and we met often. And she was head of the Ukrainian National Women's League, and she began to talk about the collection that they purchased in 1933 that we should do about. So we worked together, and once she decided with the whole board of the league to open up a museum, I was a volunteer from day one, helping her with everything that I could, writing articles for the different aspects of folk art and so on. I belonged to the Ukrainian Girl Scouts and to a Ukrainian choir, and so we would have courses and teaching, and I was always there. Whoever wanted to learn embroidery or to learn any other craft that Ukrainians did traditionally, I would give courses at the different places where we would meet. And then when the museum opened, the first thing we did was open all kinds of workshops for all who were interested in it. And then this is how the knowledge about Ukrainian folk art spread throughout the whole community here in downtown New York. I still teach embroidery. Yes, I have a wonderful group. I teach. We have 3 sessions, 8 weeks each. During the year. So for 40 years, if you count, and I have usually between 20 and 30 students at each session. It's a wonderful group of people. They come from all ethnic backgrounds, all languages, all interests, and then when they sit down, and it's like, you know, a different atmosphere. It's such a beautiful friendship and understanding between each other. From just learning about, it's not just the stitches, but you learn the background meaning of it. Why was it applied in this way? What each of the symbolic elements of the embroidery, what it meant once a long time ago. Today we look at it as artwork, as you know, a work of beauty. But traditionally, embroidery was used as protective element against any mishap, any bad luck. It wasn't just simple embroidery. It had this magic meaning to it, and magic aim that people used. And even when you embroider, sometimes my embroiderers complain that they made an error here, they made a mistake, should they take it out? And I always tell them, you know, the ancient legend that the goddesses do not like perfection in humans, so you have to leave the mistake there so that you're not going to be affected by the anger of the goddess.
Very comforting.
Yes, it is. Well, for personal wear, the shirt, but then we also have the home decor, and one of the very important elements is the ritual cloth, like you see here. This, we always have it somewhere in the home, whether it's around an icon or around a photograph of some hero in Ukrainian history. And again, it meant as a protection of the home, because in the pre-Christian days, the ritual cloths would be hung on a hook by the door. So if a stranger walks into the home with evil intent, his eyes would fall on the redness and the brightness of the cloth, and all of his anger or meanness would enter there, and he could do no harm to the home. And then when Christianity came to Ukraine, we began to use the ritual cloths around icons, but in some way out, isolated areas, they still kept the cloth at the hook by the door and at the icon, just to make sure.
To cover all bases.
All bases, yes. Right now, quite a lot of young, ever since Ukraine became independent in '91, and then after the Maidan and the protests that we had, people are just like being reborn into, and they're trying to dig up as much of the tradition, as much of the clothing and embroideries, and wear it, and even modern day weddings now, there's a tendency not to wear a white fancy dress or have a fancy wedding cake, but put on a folk costume and have the traditional wedding bread that we use for weddings. So it's a very beautiful revival of the old tradition. For example, most of the Slavic motifs, they're symbols of the sun. And since Ukrainians were in a very good society, for us, the changes in the season, especially in springtime, was very important. And then you have the fertility symbols. And any kind of linear design is eternity. People wanted to preserve life on Earth as forever. And there was always this tendency to say, well, there might be a catastrophe, something might happen. So in order to work against it, you would draw these or embroider lines of eternity on and on. You have this on the cloth, you have this on the Easter eggs. This is a motif which is like a tree of life, and a goddess, so that it symbolizes both. And again, the tree of life, the basic, the old legends say that all life sprung from the tree, that grew up from the water. Some birds picked up the stones from the depth of the waters, and one stone became the sun, another became the moon, and many other pebbles became the stars.
And what about at the top there?
This is actually a symbol of the church. That's already has the ancient pre-Christian elements and has the already Christian elements, a combination of both. I think in general, I think if many of us would choose some kind of hobby that sort of enriches you And embroidery is one, at least for me. We would be so much better off. There would be this peace and content and in a way, you know, camaraderie and friendship just by following a certain traditional habit that you love, and you share it with others, teach others, and you delve into the historic past and you do it, recreate it in the present, and you sort of combine the ageless wisdom, really, when you start pursuing this type of work.